Ahoy! Joe Buddy Hambone here, and I'm super psyched to announce my next Kickstarter for 321 Action, Children of Uma, a vehicle battle RPG, is launching April 19th on Kickstarter. If you're a fan of Mad Max and the Warriors, imagine that in 2060 Kansas, a post-apocalyptic version of the Dust Bowl, where there's electric cars and no shortage of ammunition. You play the Helsings, a band of wild animals roaming the wasteland reclaiming a world forgotten, and you get to do it in over 20 playable vehicles, including planes, motorcycles, dune buggies, and even monster trucks. Children of Uma will be running on Kickstarter from April 19th to May 19th, and if you back it within the first 48 hours, we've got a totally sweet Helsings patch that's going to look great on your bag or your battle vest. So be sure to check out Children of Uma from 321 Action Games and your old buddy Hambone, April 19th on Kickstarter. Ahoy! It's your old buddy Hambone here, and I'm back again with a brand new coupon code from our friends over at Noble Knight Games. This month, the code is Daylight, and it's good for 10% off orders of $10 or more, running now all the way through May the 31st. That's right, folks. We've got a long one. It's Daylight, and it's good for 10% off orders of $10 or more, running now through the 31st of May. And listen, we may have all lost an hour of sleep, but we gained this killer discount code. So when you're thinking about picking up a brand new board game, maybe some Magic the Gathering cards, or an old D&D book you've had your eye on for a while, make sure you use the code DAYLIGHT for 10% off $10 or more, running now through May 31st from our friends over at Noble Knight Games.
This is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. He's like, well, if you could 3D print anything, what really is bootleg anymore? Stu Horvath.
It's true. I think about that all the time.
You know, we're going to talk about bootleg toys today. This is another episode, dear listener, where we thought we did an episode on it, but we've only kind of like touched the edges of the surface, maybe dipped a toe in, but a lot of bootleg toys out there.
I feel like this is the one thing that I really love talking about, and everybody else tolerates it when I start talking about it.
Well, tolerate it for at least the next 15 minutes, folks, because we're talking about bootlegs.
Specifically, Dragonriders of the Styx. And I'm sure that this has come up because I love to rattle on about it. I love this particular period of, there's just nothing like it anymore. Toys as a thing don't seem to function the way they did in the late 70s, early 80s. Like there was that perfect sort of nexus of the Hong Kong toy manufacturers cranking out junk for the 5 and dimes, cartoon series that were starting because the FCC changed the regulations that allowed tie-ins and commercials for cartoons to air on TV. Those things all sort of came together and made like this fantastic, stupid toy wonderland. And now like Toys R Us is gone, 5 and dimes are gone. I don't think a lot of stuff gets manufactured in Hong Kong anymore. Toys just don't, like, everything's streaming, so it's hard to like use toy commercials to sell toys. It's just a different landscape out there. There's lots of cool toys, but there's no toys that were cool like this, at least to me. Again, I think that I've been put under a spell in which I have to like just love the Dragonriders from the Styx line unconditionally and talk about it any chance I get, because that's what I do. And here we go. So Dragonriders of the Styx is a toy line from 1981. It's a Hong Kong toy manufacturer called Dimensions for Children, DFC. And it was one of the toys that was just a direct cash in on the small molehill of interest in fantasy that was occurring in the late 70s, early 80s. Probably the biggest factor was the success of Conan the Barbarian with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That sort of like, there was already kind of a current of that, and like He-Man comes out and there's all these, and D&D is sort of getting its thing up. So there's a general interest in fantasy stuff that sort of pushes into the knockoff toy market. Dragonriders of the Styx isn't like bootleg. It's just not like crappy. It's a gigantic box with like a plastic mat and like a bunch of army men style dudes, like solid plastic, 2-inch high monsters and wizards and knights. And like, they're not tied to anything. They're kind of stupid looking, but they're awesome at the same time. And I love them. The box art is fantastic. It's just so gorgeous. They've been on my feed already. Like a fever dream of kid toy D&D goodness. Purple, lots of purple. And there's like a cheap plastic like castle or something, and it's just garbage. You'd buy it for like $5, $10, and like you get like a gigantic box of toys for your kid who'd like be excited because there's like a quantity of cool looking toys, but also disappointed because it's not like a He-Man, which probably cost the same,
and was properly licensed and designed.
Yeah. So and if that was all Dragonriders of the Styx was, that would be sort of like a blip on my radar. I wouldn't really care all that much. I would probably have them because they are cool, but that'd probably be it. But the second set that Dimensions for Children released under the line is called Dungeons of Castlon.
Okay.
That's the one where they get in trouble. Comes out late 81, early 82. The cover to this is amazing. It's like a crazy dungeon with like warrior dude and wizard, and they're squaring off against these snake people who have human heads. And in the background are these dudes in armor with spears and weird shields that look like doors, and they have pig heads. They look alarmingly like the Naga and the Orc from the Monster Manual from 1977.
Uh-oh, call the lawyers.
Because they are exactly the spitting image of Dave Sutherland's illustrations from the Monster Manual for the Naga and the Orc. So this immediately gets TSR's notice. TSR comes at them. I can't find any evidence of a lawsuit. That stuff has to be filed. If it was, it should be on record somewhere. I couldn't find it. I'm not a law guy. If one of our listeners is a law guy and could dig up legal proceedings on this, I would love to read that, because that's how much I love these stupid toys. Far out of proportion with how much anybody else loves it. Like Sean Dillon, our friend Sean Dillon, was the person who introduced me to these toys, and he doesn't care about them nearly as much as I do. But every time I get a new one, I'm like, Sean, oh my God, you're never going to believe what I got. And he's going to be like, oh, what is it? And I'm going to be like, a new Dragonriders and Styx. And he's just like, oh, all right, well, that's cool, man. Like, no need to text me at 9 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah, I mean, that's a straight like afternoon text at best.
Not for me. So yeah, TSR is obviously not happy about this. But as I said, there's no legal paper trail that I could find. Something happens though, because Dungeons of Castlon gets reissued. The cover art is new, and it isn't a dungeon at all. It depicts like a plane with a castle in the background. So they're just like, well, fuck it, there's no dungeon now.
You can't use the word dungeon.
But the name of the thing is still Dungeons of Castlon, so whatever. And then they did the creepiest, copyright fix that I could think of, which is they removed the faces of the Naga and the Orc. So they just have like, they're like blank and spherical. It's very weird. And that was the fix. TSR leaves them alone after that.
That's so funny, man. It's like, lawyers, come out to play. Lawyers, come out to play. And send us your billable hours.
And like the solution is just like, well, just erase the faces and we're cool. What? That's what it was? Now, in these sets are a couple other monsters that are suspect. They have what DFC calls Titans, which are basically, they look like barbarians. They look very much like the Frost Giant illustration, which I believe is Trampier. And the wizards look very much like the corporate logo that TSR was using until 1981. But they are also so generic that I think that TSR couldn't really fight back on those. And then there's a third one, which I think is interesting because it comes out in the set after this, which I believe is 1980. Late 82, early 83, called Fires of Shandar. And basically it's these lava men, and they're great.
I love them.
Yeah, they're so good. They look gloopy, and they're just perfect. Bright red plastic. And you can see them on the cover of the box. They're like attacking. They're coming out of like a cave volcano, and they're like hurling fire, and everybody's, fighting back. And it's great. The thing is that if they were green, you would immediately go, oh, well, that's a shambling mound.
Yeah.
Like 100%, right down to the weird carrot nose. It is Dave Sutherland's illustration. I don't know if they were just like thumbing their noses at TSR, or maybe they, they got away with it. TSR never came back. So like, I don't know, but we have an unofficial shambling mound toy that's pretty great.
It always takes me back to that quote by Reggie Blackmore, which is, you either need to be a genius or a clever thief.
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like this is a little bit of column C, which is, we'll do what we can to get away with it.
Yeah. After a little while, this is just like not the thing that you're going to make money off of selling. And Five and Dimes, they exist for a long time. You can find these sculpts repackaged probably now if you looked at the right place. Those molds have been around. There's like different mold variations. It's this really weird, interesting scene where like the mold just gets sold and sold and sold, and then people bootleg off of that mold and like repackage it. So these toys do crop up in weird spots, mostly the knights and the non-monsters, but not through DFC. DFC in 83 shifts gears. They decide that they want to really get into there's like an art to being a knockoff, right? You want to be close enough to the thing that you're knocking off that you can confuse Granny and Grandpa to buy it at the counter of the Five and Dime for your birthday, so that you get like the thing that you don't get the thing that you want, but like it's like just next door to. And you want to do this in such a way that you don't get sued by the actual copyright holder. And that's what DFC tries to do with their second iteration of the Dragonriders of the Styx line. They make 3.5-inch figures in sort of like that G.I. Joe scale to compete, I guess, sort of with the D&D toy line.
Yeah.
They are such like beautifully stupid toys. I have them on the shelf. They are so good but bad at the same time. There's like a red dude with black devil wings. There's like the stupidest wizard you've ever seen.
Yeah, I've seen him. He looks pretty stupid.
Stupidest barbarian you've ever seen. There's like the dragon man who's just like green and scaly, but like has like an alligator head. Like they're just, the minimum amount of thought went into these designs, but there is a level of craftsmanship that is really good. They're highly articulated. Their shoulders definitely go, their neck goes. They have knee joints and hip joints. I can't remember off the top of my head if they could shimmy like at their waist. I don't think they can, but having knee joints at that time, pretty wild. They're not rubber band toys. They're all solid hinges, all original sculpts too. There's no shared pieces between them, much like the D&D line, actually. Like He-Man is sort of famous for like every He-Man character has the same chest and like the same arms. It's just different colorways, right?
Yeah.
Saves on cost. Even though they're knockoff toys, like everybody's parts are all unique to that character. I don't think there's any overlap between the 5 or 6 figures that I have. And whatever with those toys, like they're cool, but like they don't have the mystique of being sued. They didn't get caught. They're cool, and they just kind of ride off into the sunset of like, yay, we made some money.
It's funny because in like I can't remember off the top of my head when like the Legends of the Dark Knight toys came out from Kenner, and then you had the Spider-Man toys from I think Toy Biz, where they did like the Spider-Man cartoon series toys. The one where Joe Perry was doing the theme song too.
Yeah.
And they started bootlegging those toys, different companies. So you had like Bartman.
That's right. Yeah.
With an A and 2 N's. And it was pretty much the sculpt of one of the Legends of Dark Knight Batman. But like there were so many colorways that whatever color it ended up being, it was close enough for rock and roll, but not quite something that like was officially released by Kenner. And then with the Spider-Man, like again, there were so many different colorways, so many different versions of it. Like they just slapped like different parts together and created like a mutant version of Spider-Man with a Y and no hyphen. And that's the kind of stuff that would pop up. And I'm like, man, how do they get away with it? Well, it's not really flying on Kenner's radar at the time.
They didn't get sued at all.
Well, I mean, these companies like,
how do you track it? How do you know, right?
How do you track it? They're, you're going to go to another country and enforce it when they're just kind of like, okay, well, now we're a different company and now we're going to send these toys out. It's just, there was an influx. And every time you'd go to like these little shops, Five and Dimes, they'd always pop up and they'd always be reasonably less expensive than any actual action figure. And you'd usually get like 2 or 3 in a pack. Like there used to be packs that would come like Spider-Man with a Y, no hyphen, and Bartman with 2 N's.
Yeah.
And, it's like, it's crazy. And I would always be like, man, like, how does this get by? But you realize the world is really big. And at some point when there are now so many more manufacturers of toys and so many other companies making stuff, it's like, you need to have a lot of money and good lawyers to be able to consistently enforce it all and stay on top of it.
Yeah. What's the point, right? TSR suing DFC was always like, it just seems like such a bad idea. These DFC, for whatever their faults, predatory business practices or whatever, they were making original toys, which is not what was going on with those Spider-Man and Batman toys. Those were getting lifted and modifying the molds, right?
Oh yeah, and badly.
Yeah, so like at least like these guys were just doing their thing, making their thing, kind of trying to cash in. And honestly, some of those toys, those sculpts in the solid plastic DFCs, Dragon Riders, look better than the official D&D toys. Like those orcs are spot on pig-faced orcs. They're perfect recreations of the Sutherland illustration. I love them. Same with the Naga. And the nerve of TSR for suing them for ripping off their designs when they in fact ripped off monster designs from weird Hong Kong toys. Rust Monster, Boule, and Owlbear. They're sitting right on my desk. It's really hypocritical. It bothers me.
Yeah, it's kind of like a really like long receipt, you know, like,
yeah,
but like we stole from you, you stole back from us, but now we're going to sue you from stealing from, it's like crazy, you know, dog chasing its own tail.
But here I got breaking news. This is why it's coming up for the podcast. I have breaking news on the 1983 bootleg toy front. My beat.
Go on.
No one's gonna listen to this episode. So the Dungeons of Castelon was the one that I couldn't find. It's the rare one, right? Because it got pulled from the market.
Right.
All of a sudden, 2 of them show up online.
Really?
Yeah, 2 of them on eBay. And I was just like, well, crap. Which one do I buy? The answer, Hambone, is both.
Makes sense.
Only if you're me. So the one is just a regular old Dungeons of Castelon. It's exactly what I expected. It has like the Naga on the cover and everything's there. It's great. The other one, though, is interesting to me, and this is why I had to buy it, because it is not put out by DFC.
What?
It's copyright 1983, which is a year after the original got pulled from the shelves. It's from a company called Toyco that's based in Plattsburgh, New York. I can find nothing about them. They seem to have been an American company that was obviously like reselling or doing something with Hong Kong toys and repackaging them for the Canadian market, because there's a lot of French on this box. And they've redone a lot of the ad graphics. They had a couple other toys like this that look like DFC ripoffs, one of which was like a Cowboys and Indians set. And that's what the mat is from. So it says Dungeons of Castelon, but you get a plastic mat that, you know, it looks like a hill. And inside are completely different toys.
Whoa.
There's no snake man or orcs at all. Like there is like a dude who sits on a dragon and there's a wizard and some knights. Mostly it's like these weird bat-eared ogre dudes and some demon guys. And like, but all the sculpts 100% different than anything DFC put out. And there's like a lot of nice detail in the sculpts. They're super weird and novel because I've never seen these before. But yeah, so I got a bootleg of a bootleg. It's the best thing ever, Hambone.
This is like the best case scenario for you being like, should I buy 2? I don't know. Yes, because technically you got 2 completely different experiences. That's great. Love it.
I can't wait to post about it on the Instagram next year and have everybody not give a shit. Just be like, oh, wow, you bought 2 of these. You're really excited. You're weird, dude.
This post is a callback to an episode that no one listened to a year prior.
And I'll do it. I can't be stopped. I will always talk about these dumb toys because they're beautiful.
I love it. Stu, do you have any final thoughts on bootleg toys?
Not at the moment.
Well, very cool. This is another amazing episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram at Vintage RPG, where I've posted about all of the Dragonriders, the Styx toys line that I have. So you can go back in the archives and see them in all their doofy glory.
I love it. Folks, I have a new Kickstarter coming up April 19th. When this episode drops, it's the next day. Children of Uma, the next adventure for 321 Action. It's a vehicle battle RPG. If you love the Warriors, if you love Mad Max, imagine it in 2060 Kansas with electric cars and no shortage of ammunition. First 48 hours, anyone who backs at a physical level will get a special first 48-hour backer patch for the Helsings, which is the band in the book. We got a lot of cool things in store for this, including, if we can hit the goal, an additional zine adventure. So definitely check that out on Kickstarter, April 19th, Children of Uma. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. If you really like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerepg. We got early release episodes. We've got a killer Discord community that we'd love for you to be a part of. We've got a behind-the-scenes look at my games for 321 Action. We got a behind-the-scenes look at Stu's book, still tentatively titled Experience Points. And I mean, it might end up being the title. I don't know at this point. However, it's a great look behind the scenes at what Stu's writing, especially the other book that is in his hands being written already. So there's a lot of cool stuff on our Patreon. Stu doesn't stop between the posts and between the books and getting excited about bootleg toys. Unstoppable, Stu Horvath. Thank you for listening. We always appreciate our listeners. For Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.